I recently had lunch with the president of the Dallas Mavericks. Very nice man. After we're done, the waiter comes up and he says, "Would either of you gentlemen like to have dessert?" And Rick looks at me and says, "You don't look like a guy who eats dessert." I went home and I had a bowl of ice cream. Mac Engel, Fort Worth Star Telegram, Engel Angle podcast here on the Sunset Lounge. Now, I don't know if you've noticed it or not, but the leaves are turning, which means it's football season. I know the leaves aren't really turning yet, but for some reason we associate the leaves turning with the start of football. The leaves won't turn, especially here in Texas, for like another 5 months. But football season has started, which means all the degenerates now can get their daily fix of betting on football. I don't bet because I suck at it. I'm horrible at it, so I don't do it. And there's nothing that bothers me more than blowing money on things where I get no ROI. I hate it. However, there are a lot of people out there for whom just the bet and the chance to win money and the feeling of excitement and rush that comes with that, that's the ROI. Yeah, I'm not that guy. And one of the reasons I don't bet is because the people who set the betting lines are so good, they don't win. Pardon me, they ensure that you're not going to win. They're the winner. I had a friend of mine who told me a long time ago, Las Vegas is not built on winners. Now you could say that about any number of gambling places as legalized sports betting has exploded all over the country. When I was a kid, you couldn't do it anywhere unless you were in Las Vegas or Atlantic City. And obviously, in the effort to increase revenue, cities and states have passed gaming laws all over the place. Of course, not in the great state of Texas. So I wanted to talk to somebody about the process of setting betting lines and how they do it. And I found somebody whose background is not necessarily really in sports. My guest is a former CPA, and she's from Australia and grew up in Canada. And when you hear her accent, you're going to notice that you can't pin it down because it's an accent really unlike anything that you'll ever hear before. You'll hear a little bit of Aussie, you'll hear a little bit of Canada. But anyways, she was a former CPA who decided to jump into the world of pro sports gaming, and she sets lines. She lives in Calgary, Alberta, and you can find her as on WagerTalk. You can find her on Twitter, X, Instagram, anywhere. Name it, you can pretty much find her, as well as Betting Prop NFL. Please welcome my guest, Miss Jo Madden. Jo, you have a fascinating story and one that's different from almost anybody that I've seen in your profession. First of all, you're a Canadian who is from Australia. How did you get from, I know this is a family thing because I read you moved from Australia when you were about 15, you went up to Alberta. Where in Australia were you living at the time when you moved?
Yeah, so small town Australia, like think so remote, by the Blue Mountains in a small town called Barrow, Australia. Actually, that's kind of on the outskirts of Barrow. You say Barrow like you say any of the bigger cities, but it wasn't in the like bigger city. Barrow itself is tiny. I was in Willowvale, which is like Barrow, Mittagong, Willowvale. They're all kind of joined together, but not a very big population in any of those.
Well, where, like, give me, like, I know I've been to Australia once. I know Sydney, I know Perth, I know Cairns, I know Melbourne. Did I say it right?
Melbourne, yeah, you
Melbourne,
did.
okay. And I know Uluru. I went
Okay.
there. So where are you in relation to those big major areas?
Yeah, outside of Sydney. So
Oh, okay.
it was, yeah, within an hour basically of Sydney driving in.
So your brother, I read, was a really good hockey player,
Yeah, he was.
correct?
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic, which is mind-blowing to think because the kid didn't even step on skates till we moved over here, and he was probably 12, 13. 13 when he came over, hadn't even skated a day in his life, and then just picked it up like he was a natural. So
Was there any ice hockey at all when where you grew up? Did anybody play hockey in Australia?
Yeah, so there was one rink in Sydney that we used to go to, and I think we went twice in our whole lives. It was just not something you'd want to do in Australia, right? And it's so hard for those rinks to stay nice and cold. Technology's come a long way over the last, 20 years, but yeah, it was definitely not a thing that we did very often.
So, what precipitated your move? Why did you all move from small town Australia near Sydney to sunny and warm Calgary, Canada?
Oh, it's sunny, that's for sure, but not always warm here. So my mom's Canadian. So my
Oh, okay.
dad was over here traveling. He was traveling North America actually on his way to Europe when he met my mom. And long story short, they ended up getting married and moving down to Australia. So that was kind of a thing. And then my mom wanted to come back to her family, so they moved back here, and the rest is history.
How much of an adjustment for that was that for you? Because I would imagine, I mean, that's a big jump, weather-wise, culture-wise. I've been to Calgary a number of times when I covered the National Hockey League, so I'm sure maybe that adjustment wasn't as big, but I'm sure overall that had to be a big, big shift for you, especially when you were 15.
Yeah, it was huge, especially that grade 10 experience because you go into, and I went to one of the biggest high schools in Calgary, Beaverbrook at the time, and it was just so big. There was so many kids, and it wasn't something that I was used to. I was used to, knowing everyone in my classes, and then coming over and having that Australian accent was a very hard thing. As a female at that age, the girls just didn't want to be my friend, and I didn't understand that because I did come from small town Australia where everyone was friends. You hung out with the guys, you hung out with the girls, and with the girls not wanting to be my friends, it kind of really did slingshot me into where I am today because if I would have had those female friends, not sure I would have been as much of a lover of sports because then I did pick up those guy friends and was hanging out on their couches watching, NCAA basketball and everything like that. So that was a big life change for sure.
So were people intimidated by you, or did you stand out because of your accent at all? Just,
Yeah.
I mean, you still have it, obviously, and that's been a long time ago, but you still obviously have it. Did you stand out to the point where like people just like, well, what do we make of this person? Who is this down under freak? Is that what you ran into? And I say that
Well,
jokingly.
yeah, the girls. The girls are mean, right? Grade 10 girls, they're looking for any reason not to like you. And coming over, you got the accent, so there's the attention coming from the boys. And then it was hard because then the girls didn't like you because you got the attention from the boys. So it actually made me mimic the Canadian accent. And I feel like I almost, nail it 80% of the time. There's some words that do slip every once in a while here and there. And I couldn't fake it to save my life trying to mimic the Australian once again. But it's really interesting. So I did stand out like a sore thumb. I also, I don't know, it was very different. I think I was very naive for my age as well. Also growing up in backcountry Australia compared to city girls here. So it was a huge difference for me.
So when you were in Australia, take me back to when you were a kid before you moved to Calgary. Obviously, you were still a kid when you were in Calgary, but you played some sports. I read you picked up netball. Netball is wildly popular in England and South Africa, and I would be willing to bet Australia,
Yeah.
all those colonized nations, Canada too. Did you pick up netball when you were in Canada or when you were in Australia?
In Australia, I started from a very young age playing down there. It was always like the Saturday all-day tournaments. It was absolutely the best thing ever. So I can't even remember a time that I wasn't playing netball down in Australia. Like my whole school-age life, at least, like from probably grade 1 on, was everything to do with netball. So it was a lot of fun. And I remember those Saturdays. It was the best. My mom would drop me off in the morning. She'd give me canteen money for the meat pie and the creaming soda, the only time I was allowed pop during the week. And yeah, it was fantastic.
All right, you said the magic word meat pie.
Oh yeah, meat pie.
What's in a meat pie? Can you
I
educate
don't
my
want to know.
audience? What's in a meat pie exactly?
Okay, so meat pies are absolutely the best. I'm just hoping that some of the rumors about what were in meat pies back in the day weren't, because I'm pretty sure I wouldn't want to eat it if I knew exactly what it was. But it's meant to be ground beef pie, right? And
Ground
they're
beef
thick.
pie.
They're not soupy. Like I can't understand the pies over in North America. They're soupy. You can't hold them and bite into them. You bite into a pie in Australia, you put some ketchup on that, and that's not moving. It's like biting into a sausage roll. Like nothing is falling out on you. It's the best.
Do you remember the time of year when you moved to Canada?
Yeah, it was freezing cold, which could have been February. I'm guessing it was
Or it could
February.
have been June.
Yeah, yeah, it could have been July. Like I was
Right.
looking at 11 degrees here the other day with rain. It was awful, but I believe it was about a February, and it was really funny because my mom didn't come over with us right away. My dad brought us back, and we were staying at my grandmother's, and we were so excited to see that snow. And we go running down the snow in our pajamas, and she slammed the door and went, "If you're dumb enough to run out without coats and shoes, you can stay outside." So we never did that again.
How long? I originally grew up in Indiana, and that was back when there was, winters were really cold, and we would have snow. And then I eventually moved here, and I would always to Texas, and I always marveled at Texans who said, "Oh, I can't wait for it to snow. It's great. I love snow. I love snow." And I'm like, yeah, no. The snow lasts. The charm of it lasts for about 48 hours, and then you just want it to end. So, how long did it take, Joe, before you were like, "Dude, I am over snow"?
It was that very first winter. We
Right.
got through the springtime, and then that winter hit, and I was just like, and we have the snow for how long? Because then I could remember it snowed into May. So I've been over it basically since I moved here. But that being said, it's such a beautiful country. I miss the
Yes.
heat. I miss the summers. I miss Australia so much. My brother is back there, living in Melbourne. My dad is 6 months on the Sunshine Coast, 6 months in New Zealand. So he has a great
Wow.
life going back and forth, beating the heat between both places. But my mom's here, the snow's here, she's here, then I guess I'm here too.
So at some point you picked up accounting.
Yeah.
This is a very safe, very
hmm
lucrative potentially career, and you become an accountant, correct?
I did. So it was a safe. It was a career that kind of is on my mom's side of the family. So my mom did accounting. Her sister was an accountant with her own firm. My grandmother was an accountant. She was such an amazingly strong woman. So it was kind of like, okay, so you don't know what you want to do for school? Go into accounting. And it was a good backbone to be able to get, especially going into the sports betting industry, understanding the numbers and being able to work with them. But I hate accounting. I'm not gonna lie. Like I had people around the water cooler because I had my own business. I'd go into companies and we'd go over all of their P&L and their balance sheet, and would go over everything. And I'd make recommendations on how to cut costs, how to save money, and then I would hate it. And then we'd stand around the water cooler, grab a coffee, and we'd talk the weekend games coming up or what just happened on the weekend. And they're like, "Why aren't you doing something in sports? You're not an accountant." So they always gave me that push.
So if somebody gave you that push, how long ago was it, Joe, when you decided, you know what, I'm going to give this a crack and I'm going to see if I can do the sports betting thing? Not necessarily maybe betting games, although I know you do, but really make a career of it in terms of numbers diving and setting odds on games.
Yeah, so a couple years before COVID hit, I started diving more into it, getting my own podcast up and running and trying to really get things going with weekly, daily kind of betting advice and digging into those numbers a couple years prior, just solely on my own. And then after COVID, it was kind of the big push because I looked at businesses during COVID and I felt so bad leaving some of my clients, but it was like, okay, now's the time. It's now or never for me. I either pull off the band-aid and jump straight in, or I stay in accounting and don't pursue something that I absolutely love. So yeah, I really pulled the band-aid off after COVID and just went full force into this industry, and I haven't looked back a day. It's been fantastic.
So there was a long-time American sports broadcaster, I know you know the name, Brent Musburger.
Yeah.
And Brent is now well into his 80s. And Brent was one of the few sportscasters who was unafraid to mention the betting line. Because you remember, Joe, for a long, long time, sports betting was in the closet. Everybody knew it existed, but it was in the closet before the NBA and NHL, NFL, and everybody said release the hounds, and we sort of embraced the more European, Western European attitude towards sports gambling, which is, or even horse racing, which has been out of the closet. But Brent would talk about it, just the lines, and Al Michaels would address it. And when Brent retired, Joe, he said, and he moved to Las Vegas. He said, the reason I'm going to Vegas is because the smartest sports fans by far are sports gamblers. For good reason, right? There's a definite financial incentive to know everything about the team that you're betting on or the game that you're betting on. But the question, and in your experience, have you found that to be true, that the most knowledgeable fan is the hardcore gambler?
I really do think the hardcore gambler, when they're making their own predictions, are digging so deep into those numbers and those trends and studying the game so much that they have to be. And you have fans, that only watch their team and they really know their team inside and out, but nothing like a gambler. When you're putting your hard-earned money on a team because you think a quarterback is going to do something or the running back is going to be able to get somewhere, and you're digging into those prop bets, the fantasy kind of market, I think you get a better understanding of where they've been. You're studying and doing research hours in each and every single day on those teams that the regular fan just doesn't get. And I think a lot of people also have some bias, when they're looking at their teams, and there's no better team to bet against than your actual team, because you know their weaknesses, right?
Right.
Like, it absolutely hurts, and it hurts like heck when you are right, but it doesn't hurt your wallet because you know where those weaknesses are, because those people that are gambling and watching their team more so than others, they know absolutely those strengths and weaknesses, and they know those other teams coming in. So yeah, it's really interesting. I do believe gamblers are some of the best sports knowledgeable fans out there.
So go back to when you were younger, before you decided to make this a career.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the first time you started betting on games? Like, was it an NHL game or CFL game? What was your first sort of toe in the water experience with this? And it obviously would have been positive, otherwise you wouldn't be doing what you're doing now.
Well, it was jumping into the Survivor kind of pools, right? With friends.
Explain that. Explain Survivor pools. I think I know what you mean, but can you explain that?
So it's in the NFL where you have to bet a team every single week to get the outright win. Right? So betting those teams every week, you can't use them more than once. And then whoever is last standing at the end of the season, winning those weeks, because you get booted every week if you don't get a winner. And that's where I started. And it was against friends. And then it was, I was single and I was dating, and it was against like different people and different communities out there, and it just kind of took off from there. So the Survivor markets were a lot of fun when I first started, and now it's just not the market that I love, because I understand like the spreads and everything so much more that people are like, well, who's going to win? And I'm like, well, this team's going to cover, and I'm going to be live betting this team if they go down by this much. So your mind just kind of works a different way.
So I have a good friend of mine who was a bookie, and he lived in Colorado, and he and I were playing golf one time, and he's on his cell phone. It's Joe, I think it's September. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm setting a bet. I'm placing a bet. And I said, you're placing a bet on a Colorado Avalanche game? He said, yeah. And I said, Dave, it's September. It's preseason. He said, yeah. And I said, Dave, you are betting money on preseason NHL hockey games? He said, yeah. I said, yeah, this is a sign you probably have a problem. And as I'm reading about your bio, Joe, I read that you have bet on preseason NHL games.
What are you saying here? Are you saying about a
No. But I'm like, I didn't think that person really existed, and I'm reading about it, like, holy cow, she bet preseason NHL hockey. Joe, who bets preseason NHL hockey?
You start jonesing for the NHL.
Do you really?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I love it. I think it's one of the best underrated markets out there. You look at the lines.
Wait, NHL or preseason NHL?
NHL overall. But that preseason market, if you can get an idea of who actually is going to be playing in that preseason, what those teams, what those coaches are looking for out there, and those younger guys that are looking to step up, it's straight money. So you got to do your research. You can't just blindly go, okay, the Avs are better than the Ducks in the regular season, right? Like, you can't just go there. You've got to really do your research and know what those coaches are expecting in those preseason games. Then there's money to be made. But you don't bet the house on it. Like, you don't bet the house, but preseason, yeah.
Everybody's house is different. Okay, I've always wanted to ask somebody this because I don't understand it.
Yeah.
NFL games are wildly popular to bet, and the odds makers are always right on it. They're always right on it, to the point where you're like, wait a minute. Joe, how does somebody set a line and how, to get that close consistently?
They're using a lot of systems there when they set those lines. And you're right, they're completely dead on. You've got to wonder sometimes how it can come down to that hook and they can just get right on those numbers. So they're, of course, going based on, a home field advantage. There is that is marked into the lines, and then you're looking at the strength of schedule where the team is coming in from prior weeks, and you're looking at all of the different elements of those teams, and they get to a number. And I don't know how they get so dead on. It feels like they know the outcome of the game beforehand, but they don't. Sometimes they get it massively wrong, and you do see those huge blowouts by a team, or you see those totals just flying over when everyone expected it to be an under. And as a sports bettor, that's what we're looking for, those lines that just don't look right when we go into it. So for myself, the books do their process of making those lines and putting a number out there. But before I even see the line that the books have, I come up with my own line, and then I go from there to see where I think the books are off based on all that information.
So if you come up with your own line,
yeah.
How do you set it?
Well, I go over everything. I'm a huge schedule person for looking at teams who are coming off an incredibly big win and a victory over a rival team, anything like that, or they've been out on the road a lot, especially in the NHL, and they're returning home. I look at fading those teams, and then I also look at who they have on deck. When we look at, the Big Ten in football, if we've got Ohio State taking on Michigan in 2 weeks, and they're just coming off a big game versus someone else, you got to look at who's stuck in the middle. If someone's stuck in the middle that is a weaker opponent, they're not going to perform as well as they are versus Michigan State in the next week. So it would be a line where the books are going to make them a 20-point favorite. In some of those cases, if I think they should only be a 10 because of that situation, that's then where I'm jumping. But I'm looking at those scheduling, I'm looking at injuries, and I'm looking at how they have performed, the trends that they have performed versus those teams in the past. And then I love to break down, especially in college football, those first quarters, those teams that start off really hot in the first quarter, first half, and then looking at those totals and where to go with those lines. So jumping into everything, there's so many different angles you can look at. You can drive yourself crazy just looking at one game and different ways that you're able to approach it. But I find the best way for myself is to look at the games before I see what odds the books are putting out, come up with my own lines based on those schedules, based on injuries, based on prior performance of those teams versus them, and then make my line. I say 10, the books are saying the spread is 15, and then it indicates me, okay, let's dig deeper into this game because the books think they should be a 15-point favorite. I'm only saying a 10. Can I get there with the opponent?
So, in terms of when you talk to friends, because I am sure at dinner, nights out, whatever, you are the most interesting person that people want to talk to.
I don't know.
Because, oh no, I'm sure because of your career. I mean, I'm sure that is, they would love to talk to you about all the questions that I'm asking, everything along those lines. But when you give advice, dole out free advice in those meetings or with friends, what do you tell them are the best value bets to look for? And conversely, what are the ones, Jo, that you tell them, stay away from those?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things to stay away from. Let's get into the best bets. You've got to look for the lines when they first come out and feel strong about those lines. If you're seeing movement in those lines and those numbers move up too high, I tell everyone to avoid it. Stay off it because live betting is a thing, and live betting is so available out there on the books now that you have the opportunity of getting that original number or better if you feel convinced that that was the right line going in with the movement. It's too high, coming back in on those numbers and the runs. Like you look at college basketball, the overreaction as well as NHL, NFL, the overreaction out there by the books when one team goes up that wasn't supposed to, bringing down those lines on the favorite is incredible. So I always tell people to look for things like that, and you look for the undervalued markets out there where the books just aren't putting that much time, I believe, into those lines, the first quarter lines, the first half lines. The team totals are huge as well. I love the team totals in baseball because if you're looking at one pitcher versus another, and one that's going to have those strengths and one that's going to allow those runs. And you're looking at the one team you think that get those runs. Normally, you're getting a good line. And I also tell people stay off the juice. Like you don't want to lay a lot of money. Like you don't want to lay minus 140 to win 100, right? Like you want
Wait a
to
minute, Joe,
build
time
those
out.
teams.
I want to make
Yeah.
sure, stay off the what?
Well, stay off the juice, right? You don't want to lay.
Juice. Oh my God, I thought you said something else. I'm like, holy cow, I can't post this interview. That's the worst thing I've ever heard. Stay off the juice. Okay. Please explain to me what that means.
Okay, so in sports betting, the books set a line. They make a team a favorite. If a team is like minus 150 as a favorite, you have to bet $150 to win
Right.
100. You don't want to do that. Risking $150 to win 100. I know some people do it. Some people even risk $400 to win 100. I just don't see value in that. I would rather look for those plus money bets. And it gets really interesting when you start talking golf because everyone's like, oh, there's not enough value in Scotty Scheffler at plus 450 to win the Open. Well, what happens? Scotty Scheffler comes out and wins the Open, and you could have risked $100 to win $450, but people just won't do it in the golf betting, but in the other markets they will. So I really highly recommend looking at the underdogs, looking at where you can get that plus money, not laying a lot of juice, because over time you could win, you know, four bets at minus 200. So you're betting $200 to win 100 and you lose one of those. Well, the person who is betting the underdogs consistently, winning three of five, is going to make more money than you.
This is absolutely dizzying. Okay, tell me if you agree with this or not. A friend of mine who was a gambler said, listen, you want to make money sports gambling? And I said, yeah, okay. Now, I don't bet on anything. I'm too cheap and I'm suck at it. But his advice was, do not bet NFL games, like the outcome. Do not bet NFL games. He said, do not bet major college football. He said, if you want value bets, bet small college football, bet small college men's basketball. And now this, the advice he gave me, this is 2 years now, and it may have changed. And he said, by far and away, your best odds of making money, WNBA. Agree or disagree?
WNBA, I think the lines are getting a little bit sharper
Is
in
it?
that market. But yeah, there is money to be made in the WNBA. The amount of games that just fly over the total is kind of crazy, and I just don't understand why those lines don't move quicker, especially in the live betting market. And he's dead on. If you are only betting like the Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon games, you're never going to make money because the books are completely dead on. Also, a lot of people don't like to bet the underdogs. So then you're laying that spread with the favorite. They've got to win it by 20, 30 points, and people forget that there are those look ahead situations. So I completely agree. In college football, you've got to look at the small markets out there. You know, you're going to make just as much money betting a Wake Forest game or one of those other smaller schools as you will betting an Oregon game if you're right. So there's no shame in betting the smaller schools, and in the college basketball market as well, right? The books just
Yeah.
don't put as much weight into those games. They're not getting as much money. The market's not moving as sharply with that money coming in. So I think he's dead on. You have to look for those smaller markets. I still think the NHL, even though it's a professional sport, has the weaker lines as well. You can make money out there because there's just not as much interest in it.
About that time, which means it's break time, which means I have to do commercial time. Just a reminder that all of the shows now here on the Sunset Lounge are free, and you can increasingly find all of these shows on all of the platforms that you would normally find a podcast. This includes the good fellas Shippy and Groobs. They're going to make your days satirical commentary on viral video clips, internet memes, social media, trending topics, sports, athletes, celebrities, and pop culture. I wonder if I could do this blindfolded. I can't. The Clubhouse featuring Rob, Alex, and Don. They cover pop culture, sports, movies, and wrestling. Obviously, Beer 30 Sports O'Clock. I need to give a shout out to Ziggy. Ziggy recently celebrated. He loves the Green Bay Packers, and the Green Bay Packers recently made a huge trade to land former Dallas Cowboys defensive end Micah Parsons, and it happened right during the Sunset Lounge's fantasy football draft. Now, I'm really disappointed in this draft, mostly because nobody got the joke that I did. And this was a hard thing to do. I drafted a lineup of nothing but white guys. Do you know how hard that is in an NFL fantasy draft to have a roster of nothing but white dudes? And no one really picked it up. I think Rob or Alex did. I can't remember. I think it was Alex who picked up on it at the end. So Ziggy, I'm like, this is a great joke, and nobody cared. It's their fault. Al Maximo, this is funny. Neither of these guys, Victor Villalba, who's the Spanish voice of the Dallas Cowboys, and Carlos Nava, who does a terrific reporter for ESPN Deportes, neither one of these guys could participate in the fantasy draft because of their affiliation with organizations, specifically Victor, that affiliations with the franchises. So they couldn't participate in our fantasy draft. I think that's total BS, by the way. Also free. It's really great to see Norm Hitzkes and his morning thoughts, as well as, needless to say, Mr. Mike Reiner's Your Dark Companion. And a final reminder, minor league baseball season is almost done. We have about 10 more, 15 more days. So I need to make sure that I cover this because the good people with the Frisco Rough Riders have been with us all season long, as we have been with them for their Thirsty Thursday promotions. That is all Thirsty Thursday games. Please give it a shot with the Frisco Rough Riders. And you can use our special code for a ticket that is preloaded for $6. That's good towards your first Thirsty Thursday drink or at the concession stands. Go to ridersbaseball.com/specials. Use the following code, Let's Ride 25. That's Let's Ride 25 to access the offer. Join us for a drink in the Bull Moose Saloon. That's in left field, I think. Yeah, left field. Why is my promotion doing this? Or, thank you very much. Then you may be able to spot us in the lazy river as I'm doing laps. Although I can't do laps anymore. I hurt my shoulder. God, I hate getting old. Or maybe you see us in the stands bumming for free food. That is every Thursday game with the Frisco Rough Riders. We've got one or two left. So, Thirsty Thursdays, Your Dark Companion, the Sunset Lounge, Frisco Rough Riders. Back to the show.
In terms of betting on, you mentioned the NHL. The one that has always eluded me, and I know people obviously do it, I don't know if it's as popular as in Canada, is betting on Major League Baseball. That one has always confounded me because it always struck me as there's really no way to make any money betting a baseball game unless you're taking the underdog. And the best value betting in baseball is just based on the starting pitcher. Is this accurate or not?
I think it is really strong just looking at that starting pitching, and I like to take a couple things out of it, which is in my betting in baseball, which is the bullpen. The bullpens can ruin a game for a starting pitcher right away. So when I'm attacking that market, I'm looking at the strikeouts for those pitchers and where I think they're going to go for their outs of a game. I'm also looking at the first 5 innings. And if we've got an underdog like the Washington Nationals are today going in, you're looking at that team and where you think their strengths are going to be, which today the Washington Nationals have Soroka getting the start versus the Houston Astros, who have a pitcher who's getting a start, who has an ERA over 8. The whip is through the roof. So looking at that market, the Washington Nationals have a terrible bullpen. They got a strong pitcher starting. A pitcher, though, that still gives up the runs. You got to look at the first 5 totals. You got to look at everything there for that market and where you can get some plus money. And the Washington Nationals today, if you play alt run lines, lay 1.5, it's plus 225. And those are kind of like the markets I like to jump into.
Joe, just listening to you rip off all these statistics and trends and bets, how many people did you come across when you first started this couldn't believe this was coming out of your mouth because they stereotyped you as either an accountant or just an attractive female?
Yeah, I've got a lot of it, and I still do to this day. I'll put out a video and I'll look down at like my notes for a number because you've got so many numbers running through your head. You don't have to do your video twice because you said, plus 285 instead of plus 235 because you're trying to remember exactly where you got those odds in. And they're like, yeah, it must be nice to have a script written by a man. And I'm like, script written by a man. If life was only that easy. So,
So, in your betting history, and I've got some futures questions for you here in a second, but everybody's got a story on a bet they may have won. And what I've decided is, I don't know if you have experience with this or not. Nobody wants to hear about somebody else's fantasy football team or fantasy team,
no.
right? It's kind of like listening to somebody else talk about their kids. Like, oh my God, I don't care. No, it is. But you're nice. Like,
I
oh,
agree.
wow.
Those people can't watch Sunday football with me. That's for sure.
But everybody has either a favorite win or horror story on a backdoor cover, right? Yeah, okay. Give me a good backdoor cover, win or bad story.
Man, it was the Yankees only a couple weeks ago. So the Yankees were down in a game. I grabbed them as like a plus 600 underdog. So that money was coming in. I think they were actually taking on. No, it wasn't my Toronto Blue Jays. They were taking on a team. I was live working and betting the games. And so I had run with them. They'd come back and they made an amazing comeback. I had to like go grab a coffee in between segments, and I was like, I should live bet whoever they were playing that were down, and I should jump in because at that point I could get the other team at plus 400. So either way, I was gonna cash big just to like get that plus money on both sides. So I didn't get that done, and I came back. The other team was up. It was the top of the ninth, and the other team ran away with it. So you remember those biggest,
Right.
yeah, biggest win though was back before I was like fully ingrained in this industry. I was playing around with the podcast, had a couple of things going on and out there, and I had a long shot Sunday football parlay, and it was teams against the spread. And I had put in 2, and I didn't even realize how close I was to winning until it was the very last game. And I checked my book, and I went, they're offering me a cash out. And this wasn't a small cash out. And I was like, what's my last leg? And it was the Raiders. Now I'm a Chargers fan. Having faith in the Raiders to get something done, covering a spread, and I can't remember for the life of me who they were against. But as soon as I like turned on that game, because it was a Sunday night football game, I'd been like running around, I'd been doing something, I'd watched the afternoon games, but you had got that 20-30 minutes between. So I turned the game on and I went, oh no, like we're going to be in trouble. The other team had already put up a touchdown. I went back to my book to try to cash out because they were offering me a lot, and then they weren't, because the other team was up, and I had to like sweat out that full game. The Raiders ended up covering plus the points and winning outright. And it was a great day because that was every single game of Sunday football in the one parlay. And it was funny because when I put it in on the books, I tried to put a $500 bet in. I don't know why. I had this gut feeling this day. They knocked it down to a $5 bet. If it would have been a $500 bet, I would have had a house in Australia as well as here.
All right, so futures, it's future season for football, college football, Heisman Trophy, anything that you can think NFL-wise.
Yeah.
Obviously, where I live, everybody bets the Cowboys, even though they've got 30 years worth of evidence say, don't bet the Cowboys. When you look at NFL futures, Joe, what are some things that you like for the 2025 season?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I'm going to go back to this year that I did play last year. Now, I know a lot of people aren't really high on the Pittsburgh Steelers. They don't like the fact that Aaron Rodgers is there, but I trust in Mike Tomlin, and that's where a lot of my faith comes. Mike Tomlin isn't a coach that allows his team to not win double-digit games each and every season. Their number is set at an 8.5. And I just can't get there. I'm going to be going to the over, and I'm just looking at current odds for you guys. Over 11.5 wins coming in
No way.
550. Come on. You don't think Aaron Rodgers is really going to step up with all the hate he's getting?
No. Well, the problem with touching Aaron Rodgers isn't whatever you think. It's his age. Can he stay upright?
Yeah.
Can he just stay healthy? These 17-game seasons now, they feel more like 27-game seasons, Joe. And the way these injuries now are just racking up because these guys are so big. Did you say an over 8.5 with Pittsburgh? Yeah, I might take that. In that division, yeah, playing Cleveland twice, probably get one against Cincinnati. Yeah, I'd feel okay about that one. Now, on the 11.5, were you referring to 11.5 to Dallas?
No, No, the 11
Oh,
and a half. So I think you can play around with ulting numbers, and that's one thing I'm really big on when I'm looking at those win totals. So the over 8.5 right now is listed at plus 105. The over at 10.5 is plus 310. They're not giving you a 9.5, which is
okay.
really
Okay.
interesting to see. So I think, if you're confident in the Steelers, you've got to think you've got some wiggle room on that 9-win game. So I would take the 9, 10, 11 wins. So there's no 9. So the over 10.5 at plus 310, the over 8.5 at minus or at plus 105 is where I'd go with those win totals. So that's kind of what I look at when I'm going into it. I also think the Washington Commanders are in for a good season. The books pretty much think so too, over 9.5. I like Jaden Daniels and everything he brings to the table. And people are saying that he had a fluke. Nah, I don't think it was a fluke, that's for sure. So over 9.5 is minus 115. I'm going to stay off my Chargers. I'm a little hesitant to back the Chargers because they can't break my heart and my wallet, right?
Is there anybody else on a win total that you find, because that Washington one is pretty attractive.
Yeah,
Like I said, I
Washington.
don't bet. I suck at it. But nine and a half for Washington after the season that they just had, I'm with you. I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to do what C.J. Stroud did. Remember, C.J. had that really nice first season with Houston, and then he regressed a little bit. I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to do that. I have a lot of faith in that staff. I'm a little biased because Dan Quinn was with the Cowboys, and I got to spend a little bit of time with him. I think he's really sharp. So I would feel better about over on a 9.5 than under, barring injury. But is there anything else on that 32 amongst those 32 teams when it comes to the over/under that you feel that's a potentially attractive number?
Yeah, I think the Green Bay Packers attractive number at 9.5. You're getting that at plus 105. I love what Jordan Love brings to the table and all of that team. And I think his wide receiving core is nice and solid. And I think that offensive line is going to continue to hold in front of him. And then another one I think a lot of people are sleeping on is the Denver Broncos. Now, the AFC West is such a hard division. I know it so well, being a Chargers fan with the Kansas City Chiefs in there. So the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Broncos, and the Raiders, and I think the Broncos are going to make a step forward. I love what Sean Payton has done with this team, what he's got Bo Nix being able to do out there on the field. I do think there's so much room for improvement for them coming into this season, and I think he's really going to get command of them. So it's plus 110 over 9.5 wins in a hard division. I think the Broncos can get there.
Do you have that? Do you have the win totals in front of you? Because I see you
Yeah, I
looking
do.
down. Can you see what Dallas's is?
Yeah, I bet you it's 11.5. No, they're actually making it really reasonable here. Over, it's 7.5, minus 125 over 7.5.
Wow.
Crazy. Dallas had such a hard season though last year.
You know what? I would take the. Somebody doesn't like them. I would take the over on that one. Doesn't mean I am. Be happy to bet your money on it. What do you think of North Carolina under Bill Belichick?
I don't know. I really worry about his personal life interfering in that situation.
Ooh,
I do.
that's gold. Can't just run from that one. Tell me why. I'm not disagreeing with you, but tell me why.
Well, because there's so much drama around it. Like everyone's making it out to be such a big thing. What other head coach out there has the other aspect of who is in his bedroom of a nighttime, right? Like no other coach has that. Not that I can think of, right?
This is certainly, well, I think, I mean, you know, trying to be delicate about this. A lot of those coaches, a lot, not all, a lot, because of the schedules that they keep, traditionally have some dysfunctional private lives, as a lot of people do, but they're a little bit more susceptible to it.
Not public.
Right, not public at all. And if they do, which does sometimes happen, then it usually kind of goes away in relatively short order. This has not. And I think the reason why it stands out for two reasons. One, the age difference is ridiculous, right? I'm sorry, it's ridiculous. And I've wondered, I've talked about this with friends of mine, Joe. I'm like, what in the hell are you talking about? I'm serious. She's 24. He's 50 years older. It's legal. It's fine. It's your business. But I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, what are the common interests? Your favorite color? other than your wild, I mean, I'm not kidding. And then the other part of it too is he's obviously an exceptionally bright man. But whatever you want to think about his personality quirks, he is a very, very bright man who had a run unlike very few in any professional sport ever have. In fact, you can make a really strong case that what he did in New England is the single most impressive coaching feat in any professional sport in any era. And the reason I say that is because the NFL put mechanisms in place to make sure that kind of dominance doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
And they did it anyways. So all credit to him. All that being said, he's a little bit of a social misfit, right?
Oh, absolutely. Right.
And
And
that,
you've got to think like how much praise he's got over the years and how much everyone's put him up on this pedestal. It's got to be really hard for him to even try to fit into normal society. So I understand why he's a little bit of a misfit there, but I don't understand the age difference. You saw those articles come up by her previous boyfriend who was probably around the same age saying she's wise beyond her years, and I don't know her from a hole in the wall, so maybe she is a very old soul out there and
how many years?
in-depth conversations to have. I don't know.
I'm just like, one of the biggest lies that, no, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
Something when I was younger, I'm 52 now, and one thing what I used to think when I was younger was, well, gee whiz, when you graduate from college, the age difference between 23 and however old isn't, it's kind of a wash. Oh my God, add that to the list of things that I was wrong about, right? And I'm sure you have a son who's
Yeah.
you say 20 or 21?
21, yeah.
21. So you get it. I have a daughter who's 16,
Yeah.
and I sit there and think, the languages sometimes are totally different. And now, I'm sorry, but I'm like, who are you kidding? Like, what's there to discuss?
Exactly. Right? Like if there was a 40-year-old coming around my son, she probably wouldn't be around tomorrow.
Yes,
That's all I'm saying.
you bring up a great point. I taught college classes for a long time, and there's a mentor relationship there. They did, and they should, much like I did when I was in school. They look up to you because of your experience, I hope, and your knowledge and expertise or any of those things. And I'm like, the more I thought about this, I'm like, what? And I can't figure it out. And the one thing I kind of and I'm glad you brought it up, to think that that's not going to have an effect, some impact, some consequence on his professional life
Yeah.
is ridiculous.
Well, because I think it's a lot of stress for him as well, especially how much it's out there in the media. If she shows up, it's going to be stories about her being there. If she's not there, it's going to be stories about where
Yep.
is she, why isn't she there supporting him.
Yep.
I think there's a lose-lose in that situation for how public it has become. And I do feel for them if there's a genuine relationship there and no one's in it for other reasons, then I got to feel for them because they're never going to have that private relationship. But she would have known that. He would have known that as well. So, yeah.
I mean,
And
that's,
who else's girlfriend stands on the sidelines as you're coaching? No one's.
uh,
Right?
I'm sure there's probably one or two, but I don't think any of them, there's a 50-year age gap. Usually that's your daughter. Okay, last question, Joe. I'm going to let you go. This has been a lot of fun. You've been really interesting.
Great.
What is because the reason I'm bringing this up, you recently put on Instagram ostrich racing.
It looked fun, right?
Hell yeah,
I've
it
never
looked
heard of
fun.
it.
No, neither had I. What's the weirdest thing you've ever bet on? Weirdest sporting event you've ever bet on?
Weirdest sporting bet I've ever bet on. That's an interesting one. So we were betting marbles during COVID, right? Not really a sporting event, but definitely something to get into there. I find it really weird to bet on darts. I don't know why, but the dart market I've bet on, so haven't loved it. Bet on Joey Chestnut for those hot dogs. That's a really different market, that is for sure. You got to bet his over under. He went under this year, so kind of disappointing. He did get half a dog. That was another thing. Weird.
Okay, take the last question with a grain of salt. Do you have a problem? I'm kidding.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes Sometimes I really do think I do, especially that live betting market. I tell you, it's the best market out there. That's what I suggest for everyone. Look at those live lines.
All right. Joe, you're fantastic. Thank you very much for your time. It was very enlightening. I wish you and your family the very best. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
All right. See you later.
This is a Stolen Water Media production.